Today we're going to talk about Trump exposing his biggest vulnerability for Democrats to capitalize on, and I interview Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg about his response to certain Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and J.D. Vance trying to blame Democrats for Trump's shooting, and his reaction to even Republicans trying to distance themselves from Project 2025. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So I want to point your attention to one moment from Trump's first post-convention rally that happened in Michigan, where he said this.
And you know, the other side's going around trying to make me sound extreme, like I'm an extremist. I'm not. I'm a person with great common sense. I'm not an extremist at all. Like some on the right, severe right, came up with this Project 25, and I don't even know. I mean, some of them I know who they are, but they're very, very conservative, just like you have. They're sort of the opposite of the radical left, okay? You have the radical left and you have the radical right, and they come up with this, I don't know what the hell it is, it's Project 25. He's involved in Project, and then they read some of the things and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. But I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it. But what they do is misinformation and disinformation.
The expression here, a hit dog will holler. It's not just rare, but almost non-existent to see Donald Trump show any weakness on any policy issue. Like, this is a guy who, at this same rally in Michigan, complimented President Xi for, quote, ruling with an iron fist over 1.4 billion people. He's openly fantasizing about autocracy, meaning it's not like Trump to stray away from an issue that might otherwise seem unpopular. His supporters literally cheer him on when he complains about flushing the toilet, not exactly a discerning crowd. And he doesn't seem afraid to embrace any position, really, because he knows how undiscerning that audience is. Which is why it's so telling, then, that Donald Trump is trying so hard to run away from Project 2025. If you didn't think that it was damaging to him before, the fact that he is so desperate to distance himself here really does give the whole game away. Especially considering his denials are complete BS. Like, are we really supposed to believe that the guy whose own top White House officials authored this project has no idea what it is? Including literal cabinet secretaries like Russell Vought, his Office of Management and Budget Director, and Christopher Miller, his Acting Secretary of Defense, and Ben Carson, his HUD Secretary, and Peter Navarro, and Paul Dans, and Rick Dearborn, and Ken Cuccinelli, and literally 200 more administration officials whose sole intent is to implement it when Donald Trump gets into office, which was quite literally what Kevin Roberts, the Heritage Foundation president, said in public.
We've been working with all of them on one project since soon after Joe Biden took the oath of office, before any conservative presidential candidates had even entered the race. As my friend and colleague Paul Dans before talked about briefly, our Project 2025 has developed a comprehensive policy agenda, but even more importantly, recruiting people, 20,000 people to go into the next administration, hopefully to help take back this country for you and for your audiences. We want no credit. We want the American people, if President Trump is elected again, President Trump and his administration, to take credit for that. But it will also be a great sign, if all of this is successful, that in fact, as we know in our prayer time, but maybe not every time when we're watching the news, that the Lord is still smiling upon America.
So yeah, either Trump is dangerously ignorant about what everyone who would staff his White House would do once in the White House, or he's just saying what he has to say to fool the rubes out there into thinking that he's got nothing to do with Project 2025 because it's politically toxic. I think you can probably guess which one it is. And on the off chance that you can't guess, you really don't have to, because then Kevin Roberts explained that also in public.
So when you see President Trump say this, and what you envision as being behind it tactically?
Well, I think it's the sign of a great leader who understands he's in a terrific political news cycle. He's run a really good campaign from start up to this point. And the left's mischaracterization of Project 2025 had become a liability. I think we've seen that really turn around in the last few days since that statement. So no hard feelings from any of us at Project 2025 about the statement, because we understand Trump is the standard bearer and he's making a political, tactical decision there.
First of all, do these people think that these interviews are like Shakespearean asides where the audience can't hear what they're saying? Look, we have the internet. We have ears. When you say stuff out loud, Kevin Roberts, we will hear it. But second, that really is the whole ballgame. Even Roberts admitted that Trump is just saying what he has to say because he knows that Project 2025 is bad politics. So Trump will pretend that he has no idea who's behind it when he of course knows who's behind it. And he'll pretend that he has no idea what's in it when he of course knows what's in it and he has every intention of enacting it. Like the one provision, which I maintain is the single most chilling policy proposal in the history of this country, and that is Donald Trump reinstating Schedule F. So Schedule F is an executive order that Trump tried passing once in October of 2020, but it never took effect because he would ultimately lose the election in November. It would reclassify hundreds of thousands of career civil servants who populate the government, people who work at the DOJ, the FBI, the IRS, the FCC. It would reclassify them as political appointees. So right now, a president can only replace about 4,000 people in the government when they take office. Trump wants to expand it to almost everyone. This would mean hundreds of thousands of experts in their field could be replaced with Trump loyalists. Think for a moment what a lawless president could do if, for example, the DOJ is staffed not with career prosecutors whose loyalty is to the law, but political appointees whose loyalty is to Trump. Remember, for example, in 2020, when Trump and Republicans called for ballots to be thrown out in places like Detroit and Philly and Milwaukee. And of course, it didn't work then because Schedule F wasn't in effect, and we had real prosecutors at the DOJ who wouldn't humor that kind of nonsense. But if it does go into effect and Trump's in office, and now you have thousands of Trump sycophants in charge of validating those claims and deciding, you know what, we think there was fraud in these Democratic strongholds, and those votes just have to be thrown away. That means that suddenly, votes in big population centers that are at the heart of these bogus fraud claims would be at risk of getting tossed. Think about what happens in elections when the votes in Philly or Detroit or Milwaukee get thrown away. With that kind of power, it means that Democrats quite literally never win another election in this country again. What happened in 2020 was them testing the fence to see where it was weakest, and they fixed the stuff that didn't go in their favor. This plan wouldn't be the first steps toward autocracy, it would be autocracy. So yeah, Project 2025 is dangerous, and the more people who know about it can recognize the ways in which it will fundamentally change our country. And the problem for Trump is that more and more people are learning what it is, which is why he's trying so hard to distance himself from it. But it's his plan, authored by his people, to be carried out in his White House. So take his denials as proof that we are hovering above the target here. If ever there was a topic to double down on, it's the one he's trying really hard to distract you from. Next up is a preview of my interview with Pete Buttigieg, but first, two quick announcements. The first is that I'm going on tour, so if you live in New York or DC or LA and you want to see me in person with Al Franken in New York, Jen Psaki in DC, or Jon Favreau in LA, please visit briantylercohen.com/book or click the link in the post description of this video or the link right here on the screen, and this way you can grab tickets. There are still plenty of tickets available in DC, but we are about to sell out in LA and New York. And the second is that my book is coming out in just a few weeks. So if you haven't yet ordered Shameless and you want a free signed book plate that's only available during this pre-order period, again, you can head over to briantylercohen.com/book, or again, click that same link in the post description of this video. And by the way, for anybody who buys the book or buys tickets to the shows, I really, really appreciate it. Okay, here's a preview of my interview with Pete Buttigieg. I feel like I need your response to this.
And you think gas prices are high now? Just wait until you're forced to drive an electric vehicle.
So, I don't even know how to ask this question, but how? How?
All right, yeah. Where do you begin, right? First of all, nobody's forcing anybody to drive anything. Except this, I will acknowledge this. We are forcing the auto industry to innovate and make gas cars more fuel efficient, as we have done since the Nixon administration, because it saves people money at the pump. Right. We are trying to save people money on fueling their car, whether they do it with gasoline or whether they do it with electricity. And part of how you do that is by requiring industry to get more efficient. When we first introduced CAFE standards, that's what they're called, corporate average fuel efficiency standards, again, in the Nixon years. So this is not some modern, progressive, Democrat woke invention. The miles per gallon were, I think the first standards were something like 18 miles a gallon. Yep. And then industry is like, this is too hard. We can't do this. This is over-regulation. And over the years, industry got better because we required them to step it up. And that has been to the benefit of not just the environment, just people's pockets not having to buy that much gas. I would add that what we are doing is making it more affordable for people to have the choice of an electric vehicle, which is more efficient, which is cheaper to fill up, which is cheaper to maintain because it has fewer moving parts, and which has finally actually become cheaper to buy. Increasingly, it's the case that if you look at an EV and a comparable gas car, partly because of our tax credits, the EV is actually coming in cheaper now. And that's been our goal, to make it accessible for people who want to choose that. We're not forcing anybody to pick one or the other. As a matter of fact, if you just look at the evolution of the industry and the charging stations, we can't do it all overnight. And that's why the goal is roughly half by the end of the decade.
It's also probably worth noting from Marjorie Taylor Greene that you probably aren't too concerned about the cost of gas if you're driving an EV. So I don't know what that fear-mongering was supposed to accomplish for her.
If you really wanted to think it through, I suppose if everybody was driving an EV, then global petroleum markets would probably show a drop in demand, which means oil would actually be cheaper. But I doubt she thought through all of those.
Yeah. And of course, to see the full interview with Pete Buttigieg, click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on this screen to listen to the audio version of this episode. And of course, to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.